Any adjustments to the agenda?
There are not.
Okay, seeing none, please rise for the pledge. Yes, it is. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Superintendent.
All right, it is my pleasure tonight to recognize Rob Smith, who retired 2 weeks ago, he said today. It already feels like months. But I want to just talk briefly about everything Rob has done for this district, for this city, and this community, and just what a special servant and employee he was for our kids. So if you can go to the next slide. So Rob's time at HUSD started in 2012. Before that, he was working in the police department and actually continued to a little bit. That's why we have some of the PD here. And I just have to say, Matt, how about those Padres? Anyway, so Rob had served the community through Healdsburg Police Department and then started volunteering in the CASA classroom. He was an assistant when Glenn Shazelin was a teacher in CASA, and that's how he came to us. And then he eventually got himself hired as a para-professional in CASA. He, did a fantastic job there, and then worked as a facilities specialist. Actually, for a time, he was both a para and a facilities specialist. And then finally, when Glenn Shazelin left, Rob took on the role of maintenance and operations supervisor in 2019. While he was here, he has been our safety guru. He's been our CPR and first aid instructor. He's been a liaison with the police department, which has been super helpful. This year, he got certified as an AVERT instructor. AVERT is a protocol that we use for school intruders. And so he's been doing professional development with our staff. And I can go to the next slide, please. Just some photos of Rob's time in CASA. You can see the tiny house. He was there with Ray Hawley working on some of the original stuff, teardrop trailers that he built with Terry Pagney, coolers and other things that he worked on with our kids. While he was here, beyond the titles, when you look at that timeline, you can kind of infer some of the things Rob dealt with. And I put this as the title, Strong and Steady Service and Leadership. He oversaw multiple construction projects, multi-million-dollar projects, the new gym at the high school, the fields, the junior high remodel. And then, you know, what I will never forget is Rob's leadership through 3 wildfires. He was a volunteer in the County Emergency Operations Center during the Tubbs fire. He was instrumental in the city and for the schools in the Kincaid and Walbridge fire. Actually, during the Walbridge fire, he actually helped me move things out of my house because we were evacuated. Fire got within a half a mile. And then the pandemic. Rob, I couldn't have asked for better leadership during the pandemic. He just took care of things. He would research what the best practices were, and he'd have them dealt with. And so all the hygiene and cleaning protocols that kept everybody safe, other safety measures, when we were conceiving of how to have kids come in and do temp checks and things like that, having air filters in classrooms, upgrading the air filters in the HVAC machines. And then he was instrumental in organizing vaccine clinics in town so that the community could get vaccinated. Worked with Alliance and set up in our gyms and got it happening. Floods, he's done. Just a month ago, I called him and said, after the 4-point-something earthquake, there's something we haven't done together, huh, Rob? And this epitomizes Rob. Is I call him, and before he says hello, he says, I'm already in my car. Because I was calling him to say, can you check on the campuses? And, you know, I literally called him 10 seconds after the earthquake ended, and he was already driving in to make sure everything was okay. And that is who Rob is. He is on it. He is always there for safety. He's got the best interests of our kids and our staff in mind, and he is going to be dearly missed because of that. So we have some more photos, some of the construction projects that he's overseen, can go to the next one. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic, we actually have me getting vaccinated there. I don't know why. But Rob did set all that up and work with Alliance to make sure it could happen so that our community could get vaccinated. So Rob, I just, on behalf of the entire community, not just the schools, thank you so much for everything you've done for Healdsburg. It's not going to be the same without you, but yeah. We got you just a little something right now so you don't forget us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with the school district and the police department and the people of Healdsburg. And it's very much like the town I grew up in North Carolina. That's where the accent is, by the way. Everybody's been wonderful, and it makes it a pleasure to work here. So I'll be back and forth. I still want to be doing the safety and security training. It's a passion I've got, so it'll be something I can do that I like doing. Thank you.
Not even close.
Close.
Yeah.
I can't add to what the superintendent said, but I will say thank you. Thank you. All right, celebrating our success is Healdsburg Junior High Wax Museum, celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month.
Hi, my name is Nicole Odetto. I'm the very proud principal of Healdsburg Junior High, and I have some of my students here, as well as Miss Guig, who helped her students create a wax museum to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. Okay, so just in brief, the students were assigned to choose a figure from the past to learn about, and they researched this figure, they took notes, they typed up a speech, and they memorized it. When they were ready, they brought props to school and made a wax museum in the library for other students to come learn about their famous figure. Here are some of the famous people that the students chose from. 3 are represented here today. Here are just a few pictures of some of our students. This is Sophia, and she was the actress Gina Rodriguez. This is Ryden. He's going to perform for you right now as poet Richard Blanco.
Hello, my name is Richard Blanco. I was born February 16th, 1968, and I am well known in Miami, and I have written 7 major poems and 5 others, one of them being One of Us Today, All of Us Tomorrow, and I'm going to recite one of my poems, expert from one of my poems, actually. One sun rose on us today and kindled over our shores, peeking over the Smokies, greeting the faces of the Great Lakes, spreading a simple truth across the Great Plains, and then charging across the Rockies. Thank you.
Good job, Ryden.
Okay, next we have Hannah Jenkins, and she had a partner in crime during the assignment, but tonight she's solo. She is musician Jose Feliciano.
Hello, my name is Jose Feliciano, and I have been blind since birth. I was born in Puerto Rico on September 10th, 1945, and then moved to Harlem City, New York at the age of 5. By the age of 6, I already mastered the concertina, and later in life, I mastered over 7 instruments. I have won 9 Grammys and a Laurus Award, I was also the first Latin artist to effectively cross over into the English music market. Thank you.
Good job, Hannah.
I should also mention that Hannah just left a basketball game that went in double overtime tonight. So she's very busy. Okay, and then last we have Savannah Anderson, who was the writer-performer Lin-Manuel Miranda.
As Lin-Manuel Miranda once said, history has its eyes on you. As a lyricist, actor, film, and scene producer, Lin has found his love on the stage. I was born on January 16, 1980 in New York 42 years ago. Although I was born in New York, my family is Puerto Rican. Some awards I've won include the Grammy, Emmy, and Tony Awards, and I have won these awards because of the amazing music I have wrote. Of the over 70 songs I've wrote, Hamilton the Musical is my most famous one, which includes 46 historical songs. Another musical I wrote is In the Heights, and some more music I have wrote is the lyrics and songs to the famous Disney movies Encanto and Moana. Hope you have a good day.
Good job, Savannah.
In closing, our leadership class helped Miss Guig's class create the museum in the library, and some of the videos are up on our Team HAH Instagram page if you're interested in looking at them. Thank you.
I want to thank Ms. Guig for making this project happen. Spanish at the middle school is alive and relevant, and these kids are learning how to be bilingual, and it feels so good. So thank you, Ms. Guig, for making this happen.
Hello, I am just going to introduce the force behind the Healdsburg Unified School District Food Pantry, and that is Miss Alma Diaz.
All right.
Thank you. Do we have a next slide? Oh, so I would, today I'd really want to recognize our faithful volunteers that have been with us through thunderstorms and heat waves. So if you could please come up here right now. Come on, volunteers. Our food bank would definitely not be what it is without them. We have Bruce and Steve and Phyllis and Chris, sorry. And of course Greta and Bosco. And definitely our food bank would not be what it is. We really do want to thank Steve for opening up the doors to get local produce, local organic produce from other organizations, and Bruce also. This year we also got some pumpkins for our fall festival donated. And as you can see, the quality of food that we're getting is local. It's picked that same day, and it's very intentional with the gardening that they do. They bring things like Jamaica. So thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Our families really appreciate it. And through the years, our numbers have gone up and down. And we went from 35, and then like 2 weeks later, after spring break was over, we went up to 180. In that, I'd also like to thank Rob, because he was very helpful in getting some of that management of cars, because it was all drive-through. And just helping us with tables, anything that we needed. He's always been there for us, and supporting whatever needs we have. So thank you, Rob, also. Are those all? And so currently we're serving about 90 families, and it is, from the beginning of the year, it is going up. but we really like the food bank that we have is not just a school pantry, but it's also a community building. We've made friends with you guys. Our parents have made friends with our volunteers. It's like such a joy to be there. It's something that I think I look forward to every week, and I hope our volunteers look forward to it too. Greta?
Alma's just an amazing human being. What she has brought, sorry, comadre, what she has brought to our schools, really, there aren't words to express. Yes, the food is very, very important, and there is great need. The price of food, the price of housing, gas. But when a person comes to our food pantry, that person feels like a friend. There is no shame, and there's actually no difference between those of us standing there giving food and the people receiving food. It's really, it's a truly beautiful experience, and it took amazing leadership to do that, and I'm really grateful to be part of it.
Thank you. And I think
We had some children make some beautiful posters. I'm just going to show them all to you, and then we brought them. So they're just some kindergartners made some beautiful posters to say thank you for your support. You see, we drew their pictures. Their hearts. These are awesome. I know.
Beautiful.
Sweet heart. Some of your barn. And then, oh, that was a pumpkin. And then here's heart. Sweet. And then I thought this one was really cute because they all picked their favorite fruit or vegetable and they put it on the poster. So thank you. These are for you guys to take and enjoy. Who would like fruits and vegetables? All right. There you go. The farmer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. You guys take and cherish. We'll put it over your fireplace. It's a pumpkin. Now that you really enjoy the pumpkin. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
do you want the extra ones for your barn?
Yeah, I'll put it
Okay.
Great. It's the world.
Beautiful. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you again so much.
Thank you all. You guys are great. Thank you. Looking at the food, I think I might drive through. It looks pretty good. Better than, I won't mention the name of the store, so. Okay, moving on. Public comments on non-agenda items. The public may address the board on any consent action items or item not listed on the agenda. Pursuant to the Brown Act, during this period, the board cannot consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda, time limited to 3 minutes per person. I've been seeing no public comments. We'll move to the approval of the consent agenda. Any questions or comments?
No, I move that we approve the consent agenda as is. No, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. Public comments on agenda items. Members of the public have a right to address the governing board on any items of interest, provided it relates to the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Your request to address the board will be heard at the time the item is being discussed. In accordance with Board Policy 9323, individual speakers shall be allowed a total of 3 minutes to address the board for a maximum of 20 minutes on each subject matter. With the board consent, the president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation, depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. The president may also take a poll of speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask that additional persons speak only if they have something new to add. Moving on to number 12, 12.1, student learning. Director Fender. Summer read camp at Bishop's Ranch. Woo-hoo.
Those are hard presentations, but to follow, right? Amazing stuff. And I just, the real quickly, the food bank, you saw some of the volunteers. I just want to reiterate the destigmatization that the food pantry has brought to us and this feeling of community. I encourage anybody who's watching, trustees, cruise by. It's every Wednesday afternoon. It's no longer drive. You got to walk up, and that the feeling of, we're on this together is an amazing thing. And that's my segue into Read Camp. That is also another we're all in this together. Greta, you probably know. This is our 10th year, maybe? We're getting up 8th, 9th, 7th, really? At least, because this is my 8th year in the district, and I inherited it. Yeah, I know. We gotta look, because I think we might be coming up on a milestone. Yeah. So I'm going to turn this over to really the people who make this happen. And honestly, I always say in my world as an administrator, no news is good news, right? And my job is just to kind of like push barriers out of the way and sometimes find resources and let the good people do their work. So I'm going to invite Greta and Erin Wright up here. Erin is from Bishop's Ranch and Greta is from both. She serves as a volunteer and HUSD employee and really is the link in this program. You guys know this better than anybody. Just real quickly, thank you also to Alma Diaz and her daughter who's here tonight who volunteered this summer, and the endless hours of signing kids up, right? Getting kids to sign up for this, it takes a ton of work behind the scenes. And I think people don't realize how much, paperwork and back and forth between the two organizations, and Alma and Greta really make that happen and chase after those kids to make sure they get enrolled. So real quick, I should have gone through these slides. I'm gonna let Greta speak to this one, and then we'll do some pictures. So this is about our volunteers. Yeah.
I'm really, really proud here to stand with two very good friends who volunteered and worked at the camp. We have our director, Erin Wright, here. This is my friend Manuel. I've known him for a very, very long time. He was actually Alina's counselor during Read Camp. He's a recent graduate of Windsor High School. He's an incredible bilingual young man with a heart like this big. The kids absolutely adore him. We also had a young man from Healdsburg High School, Eric Gutierrez, who was a pretty good guy too, right? Yeah. Eric was an awesome guy too. He's running cross country right now. That's why he's not here. The other person that I brought in was my comadre. Alma brings heart wherever she goes. And so I knew that if we could persuade her to come to camp during the summer, that it would be a real enrichment. I'd just like to say 3 words. Counselors. Young counselors. It's not school, it's camp. It's the magic of camp. And that's what people like this bring. We had 10 young counselors and 50 kids, and camp was amazing because of these kids. The second is place, sacred space. That's the Bishop's Ranch. Something really wonderful happens at that place. It's over 200 acres, it's wooded. There's something in the air there that people recognize and that helps people become better human beings. Thank you, Erin. The third is partnership. Where's Erin Fender? This is an unusual thing when a place like the Bishop's Ranch gets together with a public school. And a lot of public schools would be like, no thanks. That's a really cool place. But Erin and Healdsburg Unified School District are able to think outside of the box and say, how can we do this together? So counselors, place, partnership. Thank you.
We have treats. So thank you again for letting us have your students this summer, because Read Camp is the best week of the year. Camp, we're so committed to kids coming to camp and removing any barrier to that happening. This year we celebrated our 75th anniversary, and the most fun thing I got to do was interview 3 women who were at camp in 1947 and 1948. They're all in their 80s, and they could tell these vivid stories of reading under a tree and having that experience at the ranch all those decades later, and that's what I think the kids will take more than anything. with him. So we brought you some 75th anniversary t-shirts from the Bishop's Ranch to say thanks. I also would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to the Josephine Leiser Foundation, who again this year funded Read Camp and made it completely free for everyone to come. So, as well as the partnership with the school and the amazing transportation, which makes it work. So thank you. Thanks.
So when I asked Greta to send me a few pictures to put into the slide deck, I think I got about 180. We curated it down to about 90, so you can see these beautiful pictures that just in a couple moments here, I'd like to just let the pictures play. And, these words are important, but I think the photographs really capture the spirit of what our friends shared with us tonight.
Bosquito's in like every other picture. He's a pretty good counselor.
Yeah, he's a great counselor. Yeah. So again, thank you. It's a beautiful partnership. It is absolutely free for our students. I think it's something, we now have students who have graduated from the high school who participated in this. And I just, it's something I look forward to celebrating every year. So thank you. Thank you very much.
I know, it's a great one.
Bosco's cute because he looks so innocent, but he wants to be in every photo.
Yeah.
He looks so nonchalant about it all. But he's working hard to get in every photo.
Yeah, I think we're good. Well, thank you so much for putting that on. It's so meaningful for our kids, so really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. This is great.
We need to take a quick little adjustment to the agenda. Pause. We had some students who are here as part of a civic action project, I think, assignment. Am I right? Yeah, so didn't understand the process, so we wanted to work in their public comment. And so you guys know when you're coming up, we videotape these so we can get you the video so you can embed that in your project. All right? Yeah,
we have
out
the form.
Got it.
Yeah. Dale Rodriguez and friend.
Hi, my name is Gael Rodriguez, and this is my partner, Eduardo Silva, and we were assigned a civic action project to take on, and we decided our topic would be school lunch because we believe that the school lunch at our school isn't savorable enough to have us focus on our work and keep us actually eating it, because we did a student survey, and 80% of the students said that they do not enjoy the food at all, and 30% of them don't eat at school, and they just wait till after school. So we believe that better food would just overall increase the academic level at our school, and the way that students focus and how they enjoy the food too. Yeah, that's pretty much it. We have other we understand that there's a lot of rules that go into school lunch and and things like that, but we thought that the school could branch out to local organizations or food pantry to get some fresh organic food into the kitchen, or something like that, because sometimes the food that we get in the patties are a little black, and I don't really feel like eating a black hamburger at 12 o'clock. So yeah, we were just hoping that maybe in these couple incoming years you guys would have better food for the students coming in, or future seniors at Healdsburg High School, so they can boost up their GPA or enjoy it more. Thank you.
Great, Gael. Would you guys be open to meeting with us to talk more about food?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I would encourage you to speak to the food service supervisor as well as the principal. And,
Okay.
And you are right. There are studies that show that often grades do go up, especially with elementary kids when school lunches are improved and healthy food is served.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just most of the food isn't as enjoyable as how it should be. Like some of the cheese, we believe that it's like plastic, but you know.
I promise you it's not plastic.
Yeah.
We appreciate you guys getting up and speaking your mind. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And pursue. Don't give it up here.
We will.
We'll get a hold of you.
Sounds good.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Yes. Okay, elementary standards-based report cards.
I know. Oh, well, we'll do our very best. So, Tiffany Doherty, as you know, Erica McGuire, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about our revision of the standards-based report cards, but we do want to kind of just mention when standards-based report cards first came about, and that was around 8 years ago, and then some similarities and differences between standards-based and traditional grading. So, standards-based report cards are measuring a student's progress against the standard. And you've got a couple of choices. You can measure it against the end of year standard. You could do that from the very beginning, and lots of kids would have the lowest possible score because they haven't even been taught that yet. So we do measure against what they have been taught when we do our reporting, rather than the end of year standard until we get to the end of year. And the descriptors of the descriptors of achievement are based on a 4-point scale. And so you have your lowest point is students who have not yet met the standard at all. They haven't approached it yet. A 2 is students who are approaching the standard and they're not quite there. Typically, those students are still requiring a lot of teacher support, and they might be able to achieve that standard in the classroom with support, but then are not able to achieve it on some sort of a test or an end of unit presentation. So then a 3 is students who have met the standard and without teacher support. And then a 4 is that nebulous 4. So a 4 is not an A, just like a 3 is not a B. A 4 instead is a student who is able to transfer their learning about the standard and realize it and actualize it in some new and different kind of way. So that's a pretty exciting. They're just really outstanding, but it's not really, they're not equivalent to grades. A standards-based report card is not a set of scores that is then averaged. Instead, it is looking at where the child is at a point in time. So at the beginning of the year, kind of like what I was saying earlier, they may be at a 1 because they haven't even been taught that yet. And as they develop their skills, it may move into the 2 range. And then hopefully by the end of the year, we're seeing kids scoring at grade level, at the grade level standard. So did you want to add anything else about? That's great. Okay. Perfect. All right. So at HES, we started, when I say we, I mean they, started the conversations around revising the report cards back in 2020 because the report cards have not been revised since they were first conceived about 8 years ago. And so I have all these notes from the teachers when I talk to them about, hey, we need to really get this work done. We want to get it done for the November report cards. And they were like, oh, no problem. Here's all of our notes from the last 3 years. So that was great. So we then met really specifically in our common planning time and the CPT time over this last month to really nail down the different changes. And we'll talk about the changes like site by site in just a minute.
So at FMC, we hadn't had many site-based conversations about the report card over the last couple of years. But coming from AGS campus, we started having the conversations in the spring, got a team of volunteers together who are interested in getting the work started. You can see there Stephanie Fife, Lisa Pillanini, Lindsay Keith, and Adeline Lyon and I met right in June, right at the end of the school year, to start kind of looking at we laid out all of the report cards, looking at what changes we wanted to make. We got a lot done in that first kind of meeting and laying out sections that we wanted to add, sections that we found things. Again, as Principal Doherty mentioned, we hadn't looked at these report cards in 8 years, and really, I don't know if they'd ever been looked at laid out side by side. So we realized there were things missing on the third grade report card that were really important, that were on the fourth and fifth grade, like foundational skills. So it was a really good process. And then came back in August, met as a whole team, all the teachers, and then really did a lot of the meaty work in departments. So the STEM team looking at the math standards, and the humanities team looking at the language arts standards, and then with everybody determining this other changes that we'll take a look at. And then also the math had to dive in and spend some time after school too, as a whole department, doing the work as well. So we could be ready for the November report cards, which we think we are. Next slide.
There we go.
Oh, you haven't.
Went too far.
Okay.
Okay, so and we put cute pictures of kids. See, that makes our presentation all wonderful, because there are cute pictures of kids. So our new format at Healdsburg Elementary School, the HES campus, we condensed various categories. For example, there was a category called reading, and there was a category called literature, and there was a category called informational texts. And there was, so I could just go on and on. There were lots of categories, and really they all boiled down to reading, because you are reading literature and informational text underneath that bigger heading. So we looked at that, and we realized it was just a little confusing for families to see so many different categories. So we simplified it. We also used the priority standards that have been set by the state of California with the academic standards, and based on revisions to those. So everything got a little simplified, including the language. Some of the standards, if you put it on a sentence strip, it'd be this long, and now hopefully most of them are closer to like this. We also added a whole section for project-based learning, and we're pretty excited about that. So there are categories underneath project-based learning, like the science and social studies, because that's where those standards are actually taught. And then there's also some research skills that particularly go into that area, and presentation. We created a whole section just for social emotional skills, and I think you're going to talk a little bit more about that with yours. It's a pretty neat new section that it's for social emotional learning kind of in general, and it really gives it its weightiness that it deserves in an elementary school. So language arts has a nice weighty section, math does, and then here's our social emotional skills. And then we did vertical articulation of the report cards, again, for consistency, to make sure, for example, just like Ms. McGuire was talking about, that the foundational skills, for example, are on there, and that they build, like we noticed a math standard that was on the second grade report card that had the wrong standard. It was the kindergarten standard. It had just been there for years. So we fixed it all. It's all good. All right.
So a lot of the same, and really when you look now at our report cards, K or TK, I guess, through fifth grade, there's a lot more consistency than ever before. And then at each site, again, appropriately so, consistency between the grade bands. And so there are some differences. First, I'll talk about. So we added a section also about participation grades. This came from, in particular, at FMC, our Spanish teacher really wanted somewhere for there to be a grade about how students, and it's so that is the one spot on our report card that's not scored on a 1 to 4. It's scored on outstanding, satisfactory, needs improvement. So it's more about participation, but really, again, it's an important part of our curriculum, as well as we added ELD and physical education to a new section, showing students. We took off enrichment after we created this. So we decided, both campuses decided to take off enrichment, because we really felt like that was covered in the social emotional skills category, because in that category there is if a student meets behavior expectations outside of the classroom. So I felt like enrichment really covered that as well in that category. Another difference, and then I'm going to go back to the content standards, but we also created a category, and sometimes the naming of the categories, there could be 100 different names, but one overarching category that we came up with is lifelong learning skills, and underneath that is college and career readiness skills, and those are, it's what we used to call 21st century skills, but we realized we're deep enough into the 21st century that just should be what we're doing. So it's college and career readiness, because again, even for our littles, just kind of those skills that we need to be, whether it's good in a classroom, good in a school setting, or career college. So that's like problem solving, perseverance, using our time effectively, presenting of information, collaborating. So we, again, just that layout and the consistency amongst the grade levels. One of the content things I just wanted to mention for the 3rd through 5th grade is that in some areas so the language is simplified. We tried to write it in language that families would understand, because some of the standards, like, so what are the math standard? I have no idea. And the teachers were like, I don't really even know exactly what that means. I mean, what that means, right? So we definitely made the language what we hope is more reader-friendly, user-friendly. But we also, there's a lot more scores for the teachers to give on this new report card, because in areas like for writing, for instance, at the 3-5 level, they're going to get a separate score for narrative writing, informational writing, opinion writing, as opposed to just one overarching score. And the teachers at FMC thought at this grade level, it's important to kind of, for parents and for students to know where they are with that skill, because it's very different writing narrative writing than it is informational, opinion, etc. So thinking if there's anything else here. And again, I can always say ditto when I follow HES. So I won't, but we really looked at kind of what the standards of mathematical practice, the essential standards for language arts and math, and really made sure that they were on our report card, which we feel like they are now, where in some cases they weren't.
So I have to say, I'm dying to see a report card here.
So I brought one because it's my own cheat sheet. I brought one copy that we can, and it's again, I just printed off a 4th grade one. Can I pass it around?
You can't unless we have one
No.
for everybody in the audience.
We can provide, they're being put into areas right now.
Yeah.
So, they're in format for us right now, but they're getting into areas as we speak.
Can you leave it with Karen and we could scan it to him in the email tomorrow?
I would love to see it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, to really see what that means on paper.
Yeah.
And we'll be using these for first trimester?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we were plugging away, and we were doing. And I will say another thing. Like we talked about, like, we went 8 years, and we realized there were some mistakes that shouldn't. So, we really talked to the site about this. That we have to do it for, once we do it, we have to do it for the year, the report card, right? Unless we notice a typo or something, but right, because once you get started with it, but that we'll revisit it in the spring just to make sure, because once teachers do it, right, you don't know until you're in it, right? We can look at something. So, at the end of the year, we'll revisit just to make sure there are not any tweaks or things we missed. But that it's not just going to now go into the Aries and live there for 8 years without looking at it again.
Yeah, and I want to recognize that this came from teachers asking for change, right? They started hitting me up about a year ago, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then you guys have fostered this along the way with me kind of pushing and prodding. So really, this was a teacher initiative to say it's time to improve this, and you guys, leading it and supporting it. So thank you.
A quick question. Obviously, this is new. Would there be I don't know what the word is, but sort of an explanation to the parents? It's like, please note, it's going to look different than last year, blah, blah, blah.
There will. And one of the great things about the first trimester report cards is that they're actually given at parent conferences. And so that personal conversation will be able to go along with. But we did get good feedback from Governance Council, who suggested that we also pre-send some information to families just to let them know about some of the changes. So we'll do that about a week ahead of the parent-teacher conferences.
Super smart.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's great.
That's
Thank
great.
you so much. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I think this is so exciting and really great. And I guess I would just be interested if there's any way as the year progresses to get feedback from parents on the new report card format, and I don't know, how many people are going to pipe up about it, but I know that I had like concerns about the previous report cards and sort of the usefulness of certain sections, and also some questions about how exactly the numbers were assigned for each task, like what you mentioned in your presentation about, are they being rated based on what is going to be finished by the end of the year, or where they should be for this particular trimester? And I would say it was always like, or could often be inconsistent in terms of how the assessment was, keeping in mind that the assessments really are just useful for teachers and parents and kind of understanding where their student is. It's not going to, UC Berkeley tomorrow or something like that, but just that, but to make it just really useful in terms of what to focus on at home and what to have concerns about and so on. So I think it's super exciting, and thank you all for embarking on the remodel.
And I'm also just curious, I think we all understand what content standards are to ensure that the parents, and the kids, but the parents particularly understand what that means in relation to the world, I guess. Thank you. Very good. Thanks for updating.
Thank you.
Sorry. You guys can sit down, but I do think that the vertical articulation is so important, not just for consistency, but so kids and parents know what to expect. And it isn't radically changing every year. And what is this now? And this makes no sense. And it's just, you'll go through this year, and then everyone will know what to expect. And that's so just smart. And it's vertical between the schools, right? So you guys have also coordinated between the two campuses, not just the grades within the campuses.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to mention, so sorry, but third through fifth, the language arts standards are not very different at all. Like if you go online and read the content standards, there's maybe like a word of difference, and that's what ours look like. It's different. It's different at the K2 campus in language arts because every year the leaps and bounds are very different. But for us, if you look at the third through fifth grade, it might be like write a one paragraph, and then it's a 5 paragraph, but the rest is the same. So that's also very different because it aligns better with the standards. And then I think also for consistency, you're seeing from a parent's perspective too.
Well, and that makes sense that the standards are growing, getting more not complex, but maturing as the child is getting
But
older.
They're not altogether different because a third grader at third grade, the expectation is that they are reading. They're not learning to read, right? So the standards are fairly similar, just the complexity. So again, it's that one or two word difference as opposed to like very different.
No, and I get that it isn't exactly the same, but there is a consistent approach, and then the granularity is different per grade. I get,
I have one more question. I'm sorry, that just brought up when I was listening to Donna. That are you guys going to be? Is there space on the new report card for assessments outside of like STAR test assessments and Lexile level, or is all that different?
No, and all of that is really just a part of the whole picture that we use to do the report card, right? So we do send home this like STAR reports with the report cards. That should be happening.
It's a big difference between a formative assessment and a summative assessment. So STAR, Lexile, that's information to guide instruction. And so formative that educators use, whereas the report card is a summative assessment that is designed to impart information to families. So there's a philosophical difference about what Lexile and STAR should be used for versus what a report card should be used for.
Right. I think I understand that part. I feel like from a practical standpoint as a parent, when you're receiving information about your students' progress and skill level and so on, and, percentiles, which, every parent probably wants to know. And I think it's just been, I just wondered if there was any use in combining that information, because I do think that sometimes as parents, we receive the assessments with a discussion about how they're informing our students, what they're doing in class, basically, what they're being asked to read, what the expectations are. and so on. And that in some cases feeds into what you do at home as a result, what books you want to present to your student and so on. So I guess I'm just raising it because I don't know if it's relevant to put the two things together or not. But I know that on the parent side, like sometimes we get them and sometimes we don't. And it can be super useful in terms of what to do, at home too. Thank you.
Thank you.
After a respite of 2 years, 3 years, we have our CAS scores.
Yeah. So this information's on the cover sheet, so anybody following along at home. But just to remind us, for the first time in 3 years, all grades 3 through 8 and 11th graders, at least 95%, I should say, took the CASP in English and mathematics. Usually by now, the CDE would have unembargoed, so would have released the scores for the public. And, reporters wait for this. I wait for this, right? Like, when am I going to get to see how we match up to the county? Similar districts. We always pull Sonoma Valley. We always pull Windsor. How did we do compared to other districts? How do we do to the county? How do we do to the state? That is not available to us yet. So the scores are not embargoed, which means districts can share them. We can share them publicly, and there's 2 PDFs that are in the board packet that have the scores from this past spring and then the 3 years going back. So those PDFs are there. So any reporters that are watching and want the Healdsburg Unified School District scores, you can have them there. There's a few large districts like Long Beach and LA Unified who've released their scores. I don't know yet of any Sonoma County school districts that have shared theirs publicly. There's probably some happening in board meetings this week next, but none of my comadres have released theirs publicly. So it's a funny thing to report CAS scores after 3 years with no comparison data. So you'll see this PowerPoint slide deck is summarizing kind of what we're seeing. We get a look at this. We get to start seeing individual school reports, and Erica's amazing at this. She'll just start looking to see if she can find individual student reports that are coming up on the testing operations management system. And the reason she's doing that is because she wants to RFEP kids, right? She wants to use that data for placement, for many different things. And usually she's my first go where Eric will be like, they're up, you can see them. Only administrators can see them at that point. Then in August, we get the full score reports, and that's what this is built upon. When the CDE releases the scores, we see some slight adjustments. We see some kids drop out of our data pool because they didn't finish the test. They stopped going to school with us. And so they're now part of another district's data. So you see slight little changes. So we'll wait for that public release and present again the comparison data. So no, this is just our first go at this. Then once I get back into work, we print out the student score reports, and those get mailed home. So all the families, all the parents have now seen their student score reports as well. And the principals know that happens, 1, because they get a heads up from me, and 2, they get phone calls from parents saying, I got my kid's score report, and we do encourage them to ask for a meeting if they have any questions. I think it's important to remember that CASP is just one measure. It is a very important measure, and a very public measure. But we know kids this test is taken over a couple of days. And we know that sometimes kids have a couple bad days, right? They saw their parents get into a fight. They didn't eat breakfast. They aren't feeling well, and they're doing their best. So it is an important piece of information that we look at and we comb over. But I also want to make sure that we take this holistically. And, Trustee McAllister, as you said, like the importance of looking at other things like STAR and Lexile and school data as well, our standards-based report cards. So always present this with a grain of salt. So I've said some of this. It's a wordy PowerPoint slide deck. I wanted to get it all down in there. A couple of things that I haven't mentioned. The data dashboard uses this distance away from standard. So I like to look at what percentage of kids met or exceeded the standard, right? That's an interesting number. What percent met or exceeded? Distance from standard is basically of your student pool in that school, how many kids, or pardon me, not how many points are the student pool away from meeting standard in the scaled score. So it's a data point that fluctuates a little more so than percentages, but that's what you see on the district data dashboard, and that's what's on the lower part of these PDFs. So if you guys are looking at the handouts, so you'll see, for example, at HHS in English Language Arts, our 11th graders were only 4 points below the distance, the 4 points away from standard. Whereas at HJH in English Language Arts, they're 38 points below. So that means of the pool of students at that school, when you average the scaled score, how far below are a typical student from, or not a typical, average student from it? It gets really complicated. You following me?
It's a lot to wrap your brain around.
Yeah.
It is not intuitive.
No, it's not. So when the dashboard comes out, we'll dive into that a little bit more, okay? So what we've been focusing on right now, which I think is more helpful data, is the percent of students who are met or exceeded. So that's what you're gonna see as I summarize. What we're talking about right now is the percentage of students who met or exceeded, how well we're doing, how we're not. We're not yet paying attention to distance away from standard. We'll get into that when the data dashboard refreshes in January. So I got to say, it's disappointing. We had a feeling it would be, right? We've had fires, we've had floods, we've had political turmoil. I think when I do talk to my friends who do similar job as me, we're all like, wow, there's some stuff in here that keeps us up at night. One of those is the Hispanic and white scores continue to demonstrate an achievement gap. We were making some progress. And we're seeing some achievement gap. We've talked about this before. The pandemic affected students differently depending on so many things, right? Access to food being one of them, right? We can talk about that. Access to the internet, a quiet place to study. So many things, and we're seeing it show up in the data. So the places that we're focused on, significant support is needed in English Language Arts. Our kids who were third graders last year, so these were students who school closed down in their kindergarten year. They came back in full distance learning, school closed down in their first grade year as they were just learning. We came back in full distance learning when they were second graders. So they're 18 months of schooling in those formative years when they're learning how to read was all remote. So not a huge surprise that our students from third grade last year struggled in English Language Arts. And then we saw that also at the middle school, students who last year were in 6th and 8th grade. And mathematics at the junior high, we took some dives. Next one. So just some summary data here. Most grade levels are at about 50%, so about half of the students who are met or exceeding. And then you can see, this is again for English Language Arts, 3rd, 6th, and 8th. It's a little hard, and there's been a lot of caution, and I think maybe this is why the CD might be delaying the public release of the data, is that it's tough to compare the scores from 3 years ago. It was a different test. This was a shortened test, so there were fewer questions, and the performance assessment was also shortened. So we're being cautioned, honestly, not to do a whole lot of comparison. But we always, it's a question we get asked, so we got to look at it. So I think it's important to both look at the percent that met or exceeded, but it is also challenging to look at comparison data because it's a bit of a different test. A little bit of apples and oranges that we're looking at. Again, for math, overall percentage who met or exceeded in the elementary, approaching 45%, middle school 17%, that's aggregate of grades 6, 7, and 8, and the high school at 21%.
Can you help me understand? I'm just looking at all the charts and just a brief explanation. I'm looking where, the summary, it says all students, it doesn't matter percentage, and then it has Hispanic, but it doesn't have white.
Trying to fit it on my page. I'm happy to provide that data to you as a separate subgroup. Generally, when you look at achievement gap, the achievement gap is measured of the difference between all students and a subgroup.
But they are part of all students.
They are all part of all students.
So what I'm interested in is the achievement gap between the two ethnic groups, white and Hispanic.
Sure.
Okay, because that, the gap could be 10 between all, I'm just making up numbers, 10 and Hispanic. If that were true, between white and Hispanic, it could be 15 or 18.
Agree. Yeah, and I'm happy to furnish that data for you. Generally, when we publicly present and the achievement gap, and you hear that in the literature, you hear that by reporters, what they're looking at is the difference between all students and Hispanic students. I don't disagree with you, Mike, that that's an important thing to look at. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, generally in public reporting, when you hear the achievement gap, they're comparing all students to Hispanic students. That's the industry
I would appreciate
standard.
just publicly, and I'm serious, present that. All students obviously Hispanic as white, because when we talk about, again, the achievement gap, it's not between Hispanics and all students. It's between white and Hispanic students.
Understood. Okay. So I think really what the focus on right now, the principals and I are focusing on how do we accelerate and provide academic support. So quickly, you'll see some trends here. You all are learning, we're all learning more about MTSS, multi-tiered system of support. Starting to dive into that. The principals had their first information session. They have a second coming up, and then we'll widen that to the site starting in January. So that's going to be an important part of this. We've mentioned before that we provide expanded learning after school at both FMC and HES. We've been doing that since last year using COVID funds. So some students have an expanded day. Science of reading trainings, I'm so thrilled. Principal Doherty, this is her wheelhouse. It's just so awesome to speak to another educator who knows the science of reading deeply. And I'm just thrilled. She's diving into it. It's important work. Refining the math scope and sequences. We've been working on that for many, many years. An implementation of ruler, right? If kids don't feel like they're connected socially, emotionally with their teachers and with each other, then they don't learn. So of course that is a part of ensuring the success of our students. So you'll see some similarities here. MTSS, expanded learning, continue implementation of the math. The big project at HES is the science of reading. In terms of the English language arts teachers at Fitch, it's the writing scope and sequence. So the humanities teachers are diving in on refining, really creating, honestly, the writing scope and sequence. And speaking of articulation, the junior high has shared their writing scope and sequence with our FMC teachers. So there's some nice articulation happening between the grade 3 through 5 teachers and the middle school teachers.
Erin, can I just want to just kind of jump in and say that I think it's really, really tricky to look at this data in a vacuum. That these numbers are obviously super disappointing. And, I got my students' reports before I saw the reports for the rest of the district and was really disappointed. And I think it's, these are tough numbers, and I just want to say that out loud. But I also, I think jumping straight to, what we're doing to just build up and provide more resources to help students move forward is the perfect discussion to have next. And I know so much work is already going into, really working to make up what was lost during COVID and distance learning, which was really substantial. But I also feel like we're going to understand more about this when we see the scores from the rest of the state. Like, are we alone in these numbers, or is everyone looking at the same thing and understanding that the assessment is different than it was 3 years ago, and that we all know that there was substantial learning loss, and it's just a question of how to move forward with purpose in, supporting the students as much as possible to get their skills where they, to just continue to grow when there's skills. So anyway.
Thank you for saying that. I couldn't agree with you more.
And can I add that I almost wonder what the value is of comparing with 3 years ago. The tests are different. The world was different. And right? It's like, it's
agreed.
It's all disappointing, but I don't think that's a helpful comparison at all. I think we just need to focus on what's in front of us and then agree. Just look at what we're doing to, support. And right.
And it was well documented in the beginning of September. The NAEP scores came out nationally, and test scores were precipitously down across the board. So it's very, very disappointing, but it's not surprising that we're in this, considering
just
the loss
to
of
whatever
learning
extent
opportunities.
this can spur us to action.
Right.
And I think, there's key areas that are coming to mind straight away, including small class size, that is already in place to make sure that every student is getting, attention and, really, really caring professional support, every student. So, but it is hard to not acknowledge just how disappointing these numbers are and how we wish they were different. I do wonder, and I totally don't want to put you on the spot, so if this is something for later, that's fine, but how are these comparing with our own internal assessments of who's at grade level? Because maybe those will tell us something key now.
Yeah, there were a few surprises. Third grade was one of them. We knew it wasn't going to be great. As I mentioned, as part of the LCAP, we included STAR scorers in the LCAP, which is a little non-traditional because it's a formative assessment, but it's what we had.
Yeah, right.
So we were making good progress in all the grades according to STAR, and STAR is supposed to be a predictor of CASP. We were, particularly for ELA third grade, we were surprised with what CASP did. We think some of that might have just been, these third graders had never taken a test like this before. Erica and her team do an amazing job of test prep and just teaching the kids how to use the computer to take a test and, what it's going to be like. And that's true always, but there was so much going on last year. And Erica could probably speak to this more, but it's like, you only have so many instructional minutes. Yes, please do. Please, yes.
I have to talk about this.
I have to, because I hear you, and I am like, I have my little focus at FMC, but I'm super proud of our score. So third grade was an anomaly, and we have talked a lot about the reasons for that internally, about kind of why it was so. I have my pulled up my spreadsheet that I keep my own data, and I like the comparison, because even though it is different, I do want to look back to, because 2019 were good scores for us at FMC too, and so I do think it's important that we compare ourselves to what was our best before this, and so our best in terms of looking at test scores as much of that is an indicator, but for the most part, we were just about where we were in 2019, except for third grade. Fourth grade math was like 10 percentage points below. But other than that, considering everything that we went through, awesome. And with COVID, that I feel like we climbed a mountain and we are celebrating. So given the situation as it was, and all of what Erin talked about and what we're going to do moving forward. But and I also think in third grade, there were different factors, as was talked about, it's one test, 1 week. And that period of time we had teachers out with COVID. It was just, there's all a number of factors that I think, played into that one area of low score. But I just had to jump in because I am super proud of but I am super proud of our teachers. But we want to be better, right? We want to blow past where we were last year. But we still are finding that there are gaps, and especially the students that missed that for second grade.
Thank you
in the
so
classroom.
much for that. And I totally didn't mean to be like, let's just look at the, the tough stuff and whatever. And thank you, Erica, for.
Well, and it's a crazy year when we're excited when we've just held, right? Like, woo, we didn't go way back. And so, but yeah, that is where we're at.
But it is a Herculean task
It
considering
is.
everything they encountered
Absolutely.
to hold. Yeah.
I would just add to that, it's, to compare, in my mind, is, I'm not sure foolish is the right word. We always do anyway. But the point is, it gives us information of where we are, where our kids are, and it gives us information on how to work with them. Similar to the new report cards that are coming out now. It's like, okay, this is where they are. It is what it is. This is that. That's good. It's good to know that we're at this point because now we know how to get to the top of the mountain and join Erica.
Yeah, and
Tiffany.
it was like Principal Odetto and I met with her math and English teachers to review the scores. I didn't think it was fair to throw our brand new principal into a meeting with 6 teachers that she was just meeting and review the score. So I sat in, and it was a very good meeting. It was thoughtful. There was some honest conversation, and one of the things, as we have here, all of the math and English teachers have set SMART goals, right? So they're specific, they're measurable. Oh my goodness, actionable. And timely. And so, they sat with it. They made a goal for themselves, and they're working on goals as a group of teachers. So, it's one thing to beat ourselves up, and it's another to say, okay, let's, and I can't wait to see whatever everybody else did, because I have a feeling that we're going to be right in there, if not a little bit better, based on what I'm hearing from my colleagues. So I am as excited as anybody to find out that. So I'm going to keep going here because we got a big night. Healdsburg High School and Marcy Becerra Academy. This is always a tough one, right? Because we only get to test 11th graders. They don't take the test in 9, 10, or 12 in English language arts and mathematics. And so we just get this little blip in time with the high school. We have added STAR for the first time. We piloted it last year, and the English and math teachers are giving it at the same cadence that we have in grades K through 8. So that makes me excited. But we monitor other things like the percent of students that pass integrated math 1, right? This has been a long LCAP data point. How many kids are passing integrated math 1 with a C- or better by the end of 9th grade? That's a really interesting data point that we're keeping our finger on, and we actually improved. We were at 75%. Yeah, so we just ran the score. So we normally hover right around 60 to 70%. We were at 75 last year. DNF rates higher though, right? So there's some conundrums in the data that we're diving into. So I can share here that we're trying to, one of the big things that Principal Jones and Mr. Manriquez are doing is trying to increase teacher to parent communication. That is a big push for her, that the teachers are communicating directly with the parents. And, we had Alma here tonight, and we have SB, and soon to hire a parent outreach coordinator and family services coordinator for the junior high. Having those positions to help our teachers communicate with our bilingual families, our Spanish-speaking families, is really, really important. It kind of lowers the affect of translation and who knows about school and, how does school work. So increasing teacher to parent communication is a huge thing that Principal Jones Kerr and Francisco Manriquez are working on at their site. One thing I've noticed, Trustee Potmasil, on the PDFs, I did include, I was trying to figure out what to, so you'll see other subgroup data mid-page.
Yeah, I pointed it out.
Thank you. I'm like, I know I have it. Did I not put it on? So.
Well, I guess in part what I was looking at and what threw me, we have Hispanic Latino in a category, and I get that, but we don't have a separate white. So
right.
I'm looking for
and
my
part
kids.
Of that is, what we're doing in that one that's labeled Hispanic Latino, and we have that for all the subgroups, but what I'm doing there is I'm looking at that trend more deeply, and then what you have there on the sheet is just the 21-22 summary data,
Gotcha.
right? But we've got that trend data for all of our subgroups. It's already overwhelming, right? It's this 10-point font, and what to
10, 6.
Yeah. Yeah.
And 4 feet wide.
Erin, do the high school students take advantage of the free after-school tutoring?
Yes.
Sporadically.
We wish they would more, right? We have capacity to have more students served than show up. It's a tough one after school for a number of reasons, right? We've talked about this.
Yep.
Playing sports, doing FFA.
It's after school.
Right. Having to care for a younger child, doing errands for mom and dad. It's.
So have we thought about, I don't know,
other
doing
options?
more?
Yeah.
There-
You don't have to raise your
we
hand.
can't
You can
mandate
turn
it.
on your microphone.
One thing I do know, since again I'm a high school student, I have lots of things going on after school. A lot of the teachers do stay in class during lunch, which I know is not great for them, but they do eat their lunch. But they, especially for like my math teacher, she is usually there for lunch if you need help, like making sure your homework's correct or if you have any questions. And I know that they're all trying to do like a better job since kids also don't want to stay after school. Even if they don't have things going on because they're like, school's over, I want to go home. But I do know that, at least for me, I've seen with a lot of teachers have been trying to take advantage of students' breaks and lunch times to help reach out to those children as well. So if those kids like can't come after school, I know that teachers are trying to be more available during like the school hours.
Yeah. And we tried during COVID, we did evening Zoom sessions where we had two different teachers. One started it at like 9:30 at night and the other started at 10 at night and would open a tutoring session for drop-in via Zoom. And we did that at last year, and we started a little bit at the beginning of this year, and we were finding kids weren't showing up anymore. So we're like, oh, we figured something out. And now they're not. And, I think partly they're just zoomed out.
Yeah.
They forget. They can go on. It's not that being on the computer the way they were during distance learning isn't a part of their reality as so much. So there's definitely lots of talk. I have a meeting on Friday morning with our math department chair at the high school and the principal to talk, more about this.
I'm just wondering if there's other ways to push tutoring in. Kind of, you and I have kind of been talking off to the side about this and about really doing it tactically when it's needed, right? With kids where they have gaps. I don't know what's possible, but it seems like
there's some interesting
the time
models.
to do it is now, right? Like when it's still fresh and when we can catch it.
Yeah, there's some interesting models. That New York Times article that it was funny. I read, you read, Bernadette Calhoun read. Anything in the New York Times around education. So there's some interesting models out there. I think for us, some of the barriers of what you see happening successfully in other places is we're a small town with a small talent pool. We're not in a big city where we've got the Google engineers who can push in during the day and provide daytime tutoring. We're near, one medium-sized university and the junior college, and so our pool also of college students that can push in during the day is small. So there's some models out there that work in larger urban areas that we can't even get avid tutors, right? We have to get avid tutors. It's part of being an avid school. You have to get them, and we work our tails off just to get the few avid tutors that we have to. So, there's some restraints given our rural nature and just size. Yeah, but we're looking at all kinds of stuff for sure. And any ideas around the table?
Well, and I think too, then Nicole and I actually talked briefly about junior high, but I mean, that would be good too if there was resources there for junior high students to all of secondary.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
So that they can pass IM1 by the end of ninth grade.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So obviously this isn't our only conversation this year about CASP data. When it becomes embargoed, and we're thinking that's going to probably be December, January after the midterm elections in November, because the state superintendent is up for election. Just got to put that into the public record that might be why. But yeah, we'll be talking about this, and then when the data dashboard refreshes, we'll certainly be looking at it again. So this is, one of many conversations in the public about our public data. Any other comments or questions?
I want to say I think it's refreshingly transparent for us as a district to release this data. I think there's a lot of districts out there who are sitting on it for a reason. And it's not fun doing this, right? And having these, somber meetings about, oh my gosh, the reality.
Yeah.
And again, we're not unique in this at all. But I really appreciate that this was the tact that our administration took to put it out there, and let's now take action and figure out what we're going to do, because that's all we can do.
Yeah, I shared this PDF with people all over the county, and I'm like, can I get yours? And I haven't gotten any email returns yet. So
Crickets, just crickets. They're like, oh, what do we do?
Well, and that's a reason to just sort of put this in, in with everything else that we know about where we are right now, But I just think that, any proactive way that we can to provide just more resources for students to gain skills that they lost during distance learning and during all of this turmoil. I can just say from like a personal standpoint in our family that even all of last year when everyone was in school, there just still was a lot of chaos and transition. There was a lot of absenteeism and, everyone trying to figure out COVID, and everyone was just really stressed out. And I think, I'm just talking about our little house, but I think that is really universal, and there's all the mental health issues that have come up, everywhere. And I don't think that changes the expectation that our schools should be educating everyone and, moving them. But it's a crazy time, and it feels a lot more settled to me this year. So hopefully that's, kids are attending. There's not, there's just a lot more stability, it seems like. And so we got a shot at making some progress this year.
And we still haven't heard whether they're going to take the version of the test that they took last year, the shortened version, or whether they're going to be taking the old version. We still don't know that. So we're waiting to see. I mean, many of us hope that it's the shortened version. It's the same thing, so we can do apples to apples. But we have not yet definitively been told exactly what the CAS was.
I just want to put my little word in for preparation for the test, too, because our experience in our house was that it's a hard test, and that the actual process of sitting through the test, of concentrating on the test, of knowing what you're going to see when you look at the test, how to approach it, with kind of like just test taking skills. I mean, at least in our home, like that was a big factor.
Yep.
That the kids just really needed to know what they were going to be looking at so that they could answer the question and not be sitting there going, what is this? What am I supposed to do? And it's just not a test taking scenario that they're familiar with.
Yeah.
So whatever can be done.
And through the years, I mean, I'm turning around to look at Principal Odetto and Robin Doherty. That was a big part of our conversation, is just test prep, even at the middle school, right? We can't assume that because they did it once last year, they're ready to roll again into something.
Well, and especially now, because they missed out on huge chunks of CASP taking that would have prepared them for, familiarity with the test.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we have a long night yet. Thank you, and willing to continue to engage in the conversation, and we will in the public too, at least probably twice more.
Thank you. It's nice to know we're not ashamed or afraid, not ashamed. We're not afraid to say what we're doing, who we are, and how we're doing, even if CDE is. That said, let's move to 12.2A. Let me close this meeting and let me open a public hearing regarding Healdsburg Area Teachers Association contract reopeners.
And we do have a public comment from,
our president, or their president.
Thank you for your time. Stephanie Fife cannot be here tonight, so I'm just presenting for her the Sunshine Letter to let you know that we have sent it to you and that we are looking at salary and benefits. We're looking at class size, and we're looking to talk about leaves. And we're looking forward to discussing the items and scheduling negotiations at the earliest time possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you. Any comments? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing, open the board meeting, and we have an action item regarding the HADA's contract openers.
Yep. So we just need a vote to accept HADA's Sunshine openers.
I move that we approve the HADA contract reopeners.
I'll second that. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's 4-0, and it passes. We'll close the board meeting, open a public hearing regarding Healdsburg Unified School District contract reopeners. I just missed what I'm saying.
Oh, it's not.
No public comment.
CSEA.
Oh, CSEA, but
But
this
it says
is
HADA.
No, this is our reopeners.
Oh, this is
Yeah.
us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Superintendent. I was like,
Like, wait,
what?
CSEA?
What's going on? It's not
Yeah.
CSEA.
Sorry, I get it.
Okay,
I'm a little slow.
regarding our openers, Mr. Superintendent, any comments?
Nope. There's no public comments.
And any comments from the board? No? All right, hearing none. Close the public hearing, open the board meeting, and regarding the contract, the school district contract reopeners, I will move that we accept these reopeners.
I'll second.
Moved in second, and all in favor say aye. Aye. It carries 4-0. We have time for reports, and Hedda, would you like to give us a report? No reports, thank you. CSEA, do we have a CSEA member?
We do not.
No. Okay, student trustee, please.
First off, sorry I was late. Had an FFA meeting, but we're good now. Okay, I'll start with the high school. Not a whole lot is happening this month. We did just figure out we're going to do Spirit Week for the week of Halloween. So that's going to be the 31st to the 4th. That seems right. Thank you. So Monday we're going to do a Halloween costume contest. And then Tuesday is going to be Dia de los Muertos celebration / appreciation day, because that just seems the better way to go about it. So we're going to do an ofrenda, and we're going to do like the sugar school paintings, and there was one other thing and I can't remember. Oh, also on Monday we're going to do trick-or-treating down the 40s hall in our high school, because why not? And then Wednesday it's going to be class fall colors day. So instead of doing like our spirit, we typically for Spirit Weeks we have like a super spirit day, but we're like, we do that all the time, so we're going to do fall colors instead. Thursday, we're going to do bikers versus surfers. And then this one we're all really excited about. Friday is white lie. I don't know if everyone knows what that is, but you wear a white t-shirt and then you write something that's a lie. So if you're like, I don't know, for me, for example, I could write like, I have 20/20 vision. I don't, because I have glasses. And then during halftime, we're going to have like, sort of like a color run. So we're ordering like powder, like colored powder. And then when we do like, we'll have all the students come out and we'll just like kind of throw it up, and like, then we'll all be covered in powder and it'll be crazy and things like that. So we're all very excited about Friday for White Lie Day. Of course, it'll be school appropriate. So making that very clear.
Of course, yeah.
We're high schoolers, so something might, so we're working on that. And then this month is also very big for FFA. Last week there was a speaking competition on Wednesday for opening and closing. So like how we do our meetings, we basically just compete and we say it over a whole bunch of times against other like office teams in the section. And then today we had a meeting. And then next week, a few kids from the chapter are going to Indianapolis for a national convention. So they're really excited about that. I tried to get a hold of the junior high, but I think that was my bad. I think the email did not go through appropriately. I'm sorry. I tried. I was like, oh, I don't think this went through. It's okay. With the elementary school, a lot has happened since the last board meeting. September 30th, they had Todd Parr come to do an assembly, and the students got to do a creation of self-portrait mural, which was really cool. They've had and upcoming field trips. They visited an apple orchard, the Healdsburg Plaza, the cemetery, the library, and the fire station. So jealous. I took a lot of tests, so. And then the junior highs and the transitional kindergartens are starting this buddy type thing. And so they're planning to work together at least once a month to build confidence for the older students and skills for the younger ones, which is so fun. And then some big events coming up for them. In October 21st, the PTO is hosting a free fall festival. There will be games, a mini pumpkin patch, a cakewalk, face painting, a read aloud, and crafts, and delicious food.
And that is this Friday. Yeah. 4 o'clock.
Seems so fun. Very fun. Don't feel bad. I didn't get a flyer either. And then October 31st, they're doing a costume parade at 8:30 a.m., which is better than costume contest, but we're high schoolers, so. And then November 2nd, the school community is invited to a Dia de los Muertos event from 4 to 5. As a finale to the altar, there will be cookies, crafts, and offerings. And then November 9th, they're doing the Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. That's going to be a very big event. And that the families and students will meet between 7:15 and 7:30 in the plaza, and then everyone will walk in honor of Ruby Bridge. And then for Fitch Mountain, the 4th grade students are performing an opera during a whole school assembly with the San Francisco Opera Guild on the 28th, which seems really fun. And then the first trimester is coming up on November 4th, and they're wrapping up their first project-based learning units. And the teacher's doing end of trimester assessments. And then they also have a lot of field trips coming up. 4th grade's going to Riverfront Park, and then a performance at the LBC. And 3rd grade is going to Tole Regional Park. So that's my report. I know, right? Like, can I go back to elementary school? Like, I have a whole bunch of tests coming up, so just trying to think about all that. And then they're all like, "No, we have a bunch of field trips coming up."
I think as a representative, you might
yeah.
have access.
Can I go on these field trips? I mean, I'm have to, so I can write about it for you all. But that is it.
All right, thank
you so much. And great job.
And
Thank you.
It's so nice to hear about all this normalcy.
Yes.
Right.
Any reports from trustees? I will just speak briefly to the ELAC meetings I attended over the last 2 weeks at the elementary school. Without getting into the weeds, I was very impressed with the involvement of the parents and their eagerness to quite honestly ask for more. I know HES has an after-school Spanish program, and the parents are saying, "Can we have another day?" I know you're working on that, so we'll see how it goes. But I thank you for that. And then at the junior high school, the lobbying, it was very interesting. Lobbying for officers was very good, and it went well, and it came out, I think, very well. And unfortunately, I had to leave early, so I didn't catch it all. But the presentation of our current scores, et cetera, was ongoing. And I will publicly compliment Principal Odetto. I was kind of like, God, you really know this stuff, and you're, just new to that school. I'm picking on the other two, I know. But anyhow, I appreciate that. And I don't know if this is when I pointed out the picture that the staff took, the big picture that says, "We love Miss Odetto." So that was really cool. Anyhow, that's my report. And if there's nothing else.
I just have a quick thing. I got to be a judge of the Skills USA. The culinary kids had their first qualifying round on Monday and Tuesday. It was kind of more in my role as a culinary person, but kudos to Derek for getting those kids together to get started with their next round of competition with the culinary program, which is really cool.
Yeah, and if you bought the pizza fundraiser, it's tomorrow now.
Of course.
Yes. So
Detroit-style pizza.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. So, but it's just really interesting to be in that kitchen with those kids and see them so focused on. It's they're super competitive in the best possible way. So it's really exciting.
I just wanted to mention that Mr. Natelli took, I believe it was 10, but don't quote me, junior high students from the band out to Camp Kaz a few weeks ago. And they spent through like 2.5 days playing out in the Redwoods. And they also had a bunch of high school students that were there as mentors. And there was a number of other schools that participated with their band leaders. They have this unbelievably gorgeous space right out in the Redwoods and super cool kind of cabins. And they all slept out under the trees and had an amazing time. And in 2 days, they learned to play some absolutely beautiful music. It was totally impressive. So a really fantastic opportunity for our band students to do something so fantastically Sonoma County and awesome.
That's great. Any other comments? All right, we will take a 5-minute break. Let's make it a 7-minute break. Let's get back at, 10:02. No later than 10:02. A Title III program, a report. Rick Defender.
President Potmasil has established 8:25 as the ending time.
Oh, wow. But I'm going to go fast. Oh, this is Title III and then Yale Master Plan. It's going to be like 10 minutes. Or maybe 5. We'll see. Okay. Yeah, this is required to report on Title III. So that's what we're doing. Title III are federal funds to support English learners and immigrant students to meet the academic standards as quickly as possible. We look at a lot of different data to see how we're doing on this. LPAC, STAR, CAST, report cards, Youth Truth Survey, lots of data. I got more data than we know what to do with. It's a good thing. Funding is based on per pupil, so we get money for each of our English learners. We do not take the immigrant funds specifically because we have so few. We just have a handful of students, and so it doesn't make sense. So you can see that decrease in revenue is for 2 reasons. One is declining enrollment. The other is cuts to the federal funding for all the titles. All of the titles have seen major cuts in the last 4 or 5 years. So you can see it's somewhat declining enrollment, but also federal funding decreasing overall. So you can see a little snapshot there over the roughly 10-year period, just general. This is all students, right? Generally, so you can kind of get a feel for our student population. Always working on this chart. This one's always a fun one to build and talk about. We want to look at the number of RFEP students, the percent of RFEP students, what grade band are they in? So that's what we're trying to do here. So a little bit hard to see. Something that's worth saying, I'm going to come back to this. So this is from the CDE. We are in the midst of a change of when they count kids. We talked about this a little bit last year, right? So I'm going to go back here, and that's what those black lines are representing. We used to report, or not we, all districts used to report this data on census in October, right? So Census Day is generally in mid-October, where they take a dip into our data. And how many of our kids are going to school, what our demographics are on that day is what gets published broadly in the public reports. 2 years ago, they decided doing the dip on RFEP data on census day doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It should be school year. It should be within, how many kids RFEP within the school year, not October to October, right? Because RFEP, a lot of kids, we're still working on a little bit of paperwork right now. CASP scores, they can retake the STAR. So it's a school year now. So you'll see these numbers, like for right now, we've RFEP'd 30 students of the school year. 74, it looks like, wow, we RFEP'd a bunch. but some of those kids were RFEP at the very end of last school year. Yeah, exactly. We're in this middle overlap time because of when.
So the data is basically August through June.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, going forward.
Now, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Complex slide, and that's so you believe me.
Eventually, we won't have to talk about it anymore in a couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully by next year, it'll all kind of smooth itself out. I think this is an important chart, right? So this is showing you the general declining enrollment, right? So if you added up all of those students, they should add up to 100. Chris and I were joking about, we were looking at this data together, and we're like, it should add up to 100, right? And so what you're seeing there are the blue, the largest percent of our students are English only and IFEP. So they're bilingual when they come to us as kindergartners generally, and they're fluent in English when they take the first LPAC in kindergarten. So they're fluent English proficient. They also have a home language of Spanish. It's a couple of kids a year usually. Then you can see the orange are English learners. So as a percentage of, right, when Chris and I started in our positions 8 years ago, roughly 30% of all students were English learners. We're down to 20%. We're seeing some interesting trends. And you can see that percentage of RFEP has gone up because we've gotten better at RFEPing kids, right? We have a higher percentage of students who are RFEP, even though our percentage of English learners has dropped. So that's good. That's a good thing. We always want to pay attention, and Mike, here's your data, making sure we are comparing not only overall, but we're comparing white to Latino students. So we labeled the last 2 years, but your eyes will get used to that darkest red is HHS overall. So we started in 2016-17 with the overall population, 49% being eligible to apply to a four-year university right out of college. I hit a high in the 21 with the 21 graduates of 71%, dipped to 64% in this last year's graduates. And you can see white there is holding steady. We've seen that dip in Latino. We talked a little bit about this in the relation to the CAS scores, but just the inherent equities that have played out over the last 4 or 5, 6 years, and we're seeing it in all of our data points. The other thing that's contributed to this, and we'll dive into A to G completion more in a different, but just real quickly, reminding the board and the public the pass-fail opportunity. So students could opt, if they had a D, to take a pass, and that counts for A to G, whereas that is now pretty much played itself out. So a student who had a C- or a D in math, let's say, in IM3 in the graduating class of 2021, that pass got them A to G. If they got a C- or a D on their report card this past year, they're not A to G completers. C-, yeah, you have to have a C or better. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I didn't notice this before, that Sonoma County overall dropped in the pass-fail year. Mm-hmm. We sort of posited that we increased because of that pass-fail and that we did a good job of getting to kids, and that still may be the case, but Sonoma County actually dropped, which is interesting.
Well, and I think, I presented during distance learning being proud that all our kids had Chromebooks. We had hotspots, right? So we were able to mobilize in a way that a lot of districts didn't. Our teachers were used to using online platforms, right? We were able to mobilize, I think, in a way. So that difference between a pass and a fail and really just losing kids off the radar happened in much greater numbers than it did in Healdsburg, partly because we had a lot in place before we got hit. So I think that's part of it. Right, you told me to go fast. Important to compare ourselves. We don't have the Latino comparisons for the 2022 graduates yet. I don't have that data available to me, so I'm waiting on that, and we'll dive into, like I said, this data a little bit more. Always interesting to compare ourselves countywide, and you can see, as Superintendent Vanden Heuvel pointed out there, that real big difference in how Healdsburg High played out versus the county data in the 21. So again, attribute that to our ability to get through distance learning in a way a lot of other districts didn't. So this is an interesting, just in terms of talking about number of English language learners, and we keep our finger on enrollment trends in TKK. And I think we were all surprised last year with our TK enrollment, right? We were begging to get 10, 12 kids. We are at capacity in TK right now. That room is full. And so I think we have 21 or 22 TK kids enrolled today. So we saw, a little drop, and we're back up. I think what you're seeing here is we saw a dip in the number of English-only students enrolling during distance learning. Healdsburg School got open. St. John's got open. We closed a charter school. That's my why. And then you can see we're back up English only. We are seeing a dip in the percent of English learners this year. That's been a little bit of a trend. And so keeping a finger on that and asking ourselves the why around that. I presented before, kind of general mumblings around the county are families that have history here, that have worked here for many, many years. They too are now part of the great exodus, right? That they maybe are second generation and they came and they moved here with their family and for work, but now they're moving into the Central Valley. They're moving to Oregon. So we're seeing some decline across the county in Latino population, and with that, the English learner population. It's just really expensive to live here. So looking at ethnicity is also interesting, right? We don't assume because you are Latino that you're an English learner. Interesting to look at, that high in 2021, and then, I can't see that super well from my perspective, but majority minority, right? That's what we're majority Latino families attending our schools, and that's an important thing to keep our finger on, that we serve the majority of our students are considered minorities. This is a new data point that we're required to report on. So this is the number and percent of English learners that have made progress. So this hasn't been in the slide deck in years past. It's a new requirement. And really quickly what this is showing is how many kids did better on the LPAC? What percentage of students did better from the previous year? So we had a decrease of 15% of our kids when you compare how they did the year previous when we have comparable scores. We have some kids that drop out of the data set because they move, right? We don't have 2 years in a row. They moved, they didn't finish the test. So this isn't every single student that was with us, but, and those are the kids we chase after, right? When we see this, that 15% of kids, why did they drop? Right? Those are our alarm bells. Those are a red flag. That's part of our early warning system of why they were here and they did better as second graders than they did as third graders. Why is that? This is another one, number and percentage of ELs attaining English language proficiency, basically getting a 4. Right? How many kids? You got to get the 4 to RFEP. So if you compare the gray there to the red, the gray is most recent, 2022. And so we had more kids score a 4 than previous. A little bit fewer scoring a 3, but you're happy because more kids scored a 4, right? So again, this is a weird data point that I have to present to you. I think it's kind of strange. We look at kids individually, right? We've got a little under 300 students who take the LPAC every year. We look at their teachers look at their scores. Principals are looking at their scores. This is a newer data point that we've been talking about, students who are at risk or are a long-term English language learner, and trying to understand, what are the trends. I'll give you a second to look at that. So trying to interpret for you a little bit, look at the gray. So in 2019, which is the year before the pandemic, we had 84 students who were long-term English language learners. So those are kids who've been with us for 6+ years, and have not yet RFEP'd. We had 84 of them, and we had 15 kids who were at risk. This past year, we dropped that number to 66, and the at-risk population increased. At-risk means that they didn't do well on the CASP. So that's generally what they're looking at. They didn't RFEP. They're getting close to, right, they're in 5th or 6th grade, so they've been with us for their elementary years. They haven't RFEP'd yet, and they didn't improve on the CASP. So given the CASP scores that we just saw, seeing that rise in at-risk of 47 in our kids who are in the junior high years, right, 6, 7, 8, makes sense. So I'm pleased that the LTEL numbers have dropped. After we take CASP this next year, we hope to see that at-risk number drop as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a high number. The at-risk number is a high number.
Yeah, and it's attributable to those CASP scores in 5th, 6th grade.
How did they calculate it in the years when there was no CASP?
Well, but I mean, there's multiple factors to RFEP.
Yeah, no, so they haven't RFEP'd. That's a great question.
Because there's numbers there for those years when there was no CASP test.
Yeah.
Right.
I will find out. That's a really good question. Thank you. And honestly, I didn't look at it much last year because we weren't taking CASP.
Right.
And
yeah.
I mean, I look at this and I think, how many of those kids are elementary? How many are junior high?
Well, you can't become at risk until you've been in school with us for 4 to 5 years.
Right. So you could be 5th grade or
yes,
4th grade.
Not 4th. 5th. Yeah.
So at least 5th grade and up.
Yeah. Right. And that's why Erica and I are we comb her 5th grade EL list and figure out why aren't those kids RFEPing, right? Erica and I meet regularly on the 5th grade English learners. Where are they at?
So are these numbers, it's 5 or the 6 year, is that with us or just in school? So if they were in Windsor, in the United States, okay, thank you.
Yeah, in a California school.
California schools, okay, thank you.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. I was looking at this data with John Kammer, our district data guy, and he was saying that this is a tough number for him to pull because we basically have to wait for the CDE to give it to us because we can't keep track of those kids that weren't with us before they're not in ARIES, right? So it's hard for us to use ARIES to generate this data on our own because we don't know when they entered sometimes, right?
So yeah, that's a question of sort of when did they get to us? Have we had them here for 4 or 5 or 6 plus years?
Right.
And then, because these numbers, in
California.
Here,
yeah.
But I mean, this is a very different set of numbers than what we saw for the junior high, LTL 17, 18. Right. But that would still leave 50 kids at the high school? That seems like excessive.
5th.
And maybe some in 5th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much every English learner at the high school is an LTEL. 99%
right.
of the high schoolers.
Or newcomers.
Except for that, and normally those newcomers are like 3 to 4 kids,
right.
Not 10 to 12, which is what we have this year. Yeah, that's why I say 99%. We're having a weird newcomer situation at the high school.
This is fascinating. That's a really interesting graph. Thank you for sharing that.
So this is a summary of last year's expenditures. So this is based on unaudited actuals that Debbie provides to us, and this is breaking it down. So our allocation when she closed the books was $33,900. This is how it broke down. So provide professional development and supplemental curriculum from EL Achieve. Remember, Study Sync is our core adopted curriculum for English language arts and English language development. We've chosen to supplement with EL Achieve at the high school. supplement with Rosetta Stone for newcomers, receiving some great professional development from West Ed for the junior high, and so on. So you can see this is how we ended up spending the money for last year. This year, we estimate we'll get $33,000 roughly. We're spending a big chunk of it, right? We looked at those numbers in terms of like, you know, where does our efforts need to be? And where the efforts need to be, the money better go. And so you can see this is being spent at the junior high and the high school. We used to spend big dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in elementary ELD. We're feeling pretty good about that situation. But we know that we still have roughly 30, I wish Nicole was here, we have about 37 students at the junior high right now who are English learners, and similar number at the high school, mid-30s when you don't count the newcomers. Yeah, please, Abigail. You can just open your mic.
Okay.
You don't need to raise your hand.
Interrupt,
I know,
you
have it.
It's like
We'll break you that
have it in
habit.
school, you just raise your hand.
Yeah.
Because I, just learning, does professional development curriculum, like the money towards that, does that mean like helping students with, not students, teachers with their curriculum, like going to like what they're going to be teaching the students?
Yep, exactly. It's training for teachers. Mm-hmm.
So does that also go into like supplies, like books and or is it more
That's what
just
curriculum is. So professional development you can think of as training for teachers.
Okay.
And the word curriculum is the stuff, is the books, workbooks, textbooks, software. Yeah. So stuff is curriculum, PD is training.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. It's we live in our own land of language here.
Make sure of
Yeah.
acronyms.
Processing it correctly.
So that's what we got. That's Title III. Any comments or questions?
It's not a huge chunk of our budget, but the presentation was super clear. So thank you.
Great
for that.
And moving on, we have the EL Master Plan.
Yeah, so related, really getting going on the EL Master Plan. Got a nice draft. We're at about 90 pages drafted. So that feels good. Presented this timeline of kind of how we think this will play out. What we want to do is be thoughtful about the process, but also move things along, right? We're a smaller district. Generally, the writing of an EL master plan in a larger district would take anywhere from 2 to 3 years. We're hoping to get a pretty solid draft in the next year. We'll see how that goes, right? So I've been studying others. I've written a draft. I'm going to meet with Alma and Espy and Greta tomorrow morning to start getting their input. I've shared the draft with them. They'll be helping on the chapter around parent engagement and outreach. So we're here heading into November. We'll start engaging in that inquiry part and broadening, who's reading, who's writing on the plan.
So where the arrow is, identify the stakeholders, key stakeholders. Who are they?
We'll get there. I've got a slide
Oh,
for it.
thank you.
Yeah.
I missed that one.
Yeah, no worries. Yes, broad overview. Okay, so dual purpose of an English learner master plan. It used to be everything on the left. That's what you would see in an EL master plan. So if you dig up old EL master plans for most districts, it's all compliance. Right now in the county, Sonoma County's time for federal program monitoring is happening right now. Healdsburg ticket didn't get pulled. We're one of the few districts that isn't having to do it. And part of that is because we have met our financial reports, our data looks good overall. So we ducked that. But I'm learning from my colleagues in the county who are literally, they have a federal program monitor in their office right now, pulling documents. It's a big audit. It happened to us my second year in the district. It takes an insane amount of time. You can ask Trustee Romo Flores about it because she's having to deal with it right now, and they actually hired an extra person to help that district through it. But it's the point is EL master plans have traditionally been all about compliance and getting you through the federal and state compliance monitoring that happens every couple of years. It's important to Healdsburg that we focus on that part on the right, and that this be a document that centers our vision, our values, our board policies on equity and anti-racism. And that's why one of my first stakeholder meetings is with our parent outreach folks, right? Right now, the stakeholders have been district office and principals. That's been the ring of stakeholders, right? And as we build out those concentric rings of stakeholders, that next ring that I'm going to is our parent outreach folks. And so hearing from them, who do I need to talk to, Alma? Who do I need to talk to, Greta? Who needs to get early input into this is an important part of what we do. So you will see the chapters are organized. We'll get into that, showing this dual importance, and that it's not just about compliance, that it's also about a commitment to our vision, our board policies on anti-racism and equity. So far, these have been the guiding documents that I've been looking through and what's got us the 90 pages. The principals have been co-writing with me a little bit, but we've really been focused on the compliance part, because that's honestly the easy part, right? Are our forms there? Are our procedures and policies in place? And then this is what we'll dive into, is really using the EL roadmap. So we will have a town hall happening in hopefully end of January for Spanish-speaking families and bilingual families. And just like when we did our town halls, we had the Portrait of a Graduate as a document that we asked our families to reflect on and say, you know, how are we doing? If this is a portrait of our graduate, what's going well and what's not, right? Trustee McAllister, you were there as a parent. You probably remember, if we want to have students who have empathy and curiosity and collaboration, PBL better be a part of it, right? So as we help non-educators, and this is still pretty edgy lingo, understand what intend to use the EL roadmap, where we talk about being an assets-oriented. So we talk about our families and the cultural wealth and the community wealth and their bilingualism and their culture brings, and that we were responding to their needs. And it's not a deficit mindset, right? That our beautiful diversity of our community is an asset, not a deficit mindset. So we'll be using, really diving in on the EL roadmap as we engage with our stakeholders. So the framework.
Erin, can I ask, is the EL roadmap more of the left side of the screen? It's more about compliance and whatnot, like old school, or
no? Yeah, good question. It's much more about commitments to equity and anti-racism, and it's a big shift from the CDE, right? We talked, I remember presenting a slide to you all when we were talking about our English language development programs. And, you know, Chris and I got into this job when it was English only was the policy. We were told by the California Department of Education, do not let your children use their home language in your classroom. That is not allowed. That was what we were trained to do. So that is gone, right? And that we welcome bilingualism in our classroom, that we want students speaking in their home language inside the classroom and sharing and presenting. So the EL roadmap put that into policy, right? That it put that at the state level into here, that these are the principles from the highest ranks, right? From the California Department of Ed.
Would you mind just expanding briefly on these principles? Just make them a little more common sensey for me. Yeah.
So assets oriented, it basically is the opposite of deficit mindset, right?
Okay.
It's students who come to us as English learners, as emerging bilinguals, that's an asset, not a deficit.
Right.
And needs responsive is that we don't do everything the same as everybody else, right? And it has to do with local control. The local control funding formula, that we are responsive to the needs of our community, and that it's not some other power coming and telling us how to best serve our families and our students. Intellectual quality of instruction and meaningful access, what that has to do is that, and I wish Trustee Araceli Romo Flores was here, this is all about access to the core. that you don't say, well, we're going to wait to teach them science until they can read and write perfectly in English. So intellectual quality of instruction is that we're not dumbing things down, that students have access to math, science, history every day, just like everybody else. So that's what 2 is, that we don't wait in previous policies to have academic English before they get core instruction. Does that make sense?
Got it. Yep.
Okay. Systems and conditions that support effectiveness. This is about using your data, right? This is MTSS. This is systems where you're using your data. You're not just like, well, this is the way we always did it. And that's the quick and easy. There's systems. MTSS is going to help us with this, and that you're using your data. And then alignment and articulation within and across systems. I got to be honest, for us as a K-12 district, that's a little bit easier, right? We have a preschool. I get to talk to the preschool director. I get to go walk through there all the way to high school. In other communities, let's use Santa Rosa City for an example, right? They've got 8 feeder districts. So as they're developing their EL master plan, and that's why this takes a lot longer in some of the larger districts where it's disjointed, right? It's not a unified district where you've got the report cards conversation is a good one, right? The standards-based conversation is actually feeding a conversation about standards-based report cards at the middle school. We have a teacher who's looking at that for the middle school and maybe talking about it. So alignment and articulation, both within your own system, but also reaching out to organizations like the city and Corazon Healdsburg. And that it's not like, what does the city council value, right? Is there alignment in their equity and anti-racism policies at the city? Do our families feel safe and secure in their city as well as their school? So that's where the city, and to Mike's point of like, who are the stakeholders? At some point, that those concentric rings of who will be interfacing with this plan will include city folks, right? We were talking in that joint meeting with Corazon Healdsburg about, has the city and HUSD done much work together, and we haven't in the past. This will be an actionable item. This will be a place where we can get work done, right? We need to have that conversation.
Thank you. That's super helpful.
Yeah. Great question. Okay. Went too bad. Okay, so the chapters, we've organized it. Again, if you look at even OUSD's, Oakland's, right, that I hold up as this is cool. We should be learning from this. Oakland's is awesome. Their first chapter is identification, placement, parent notification, reclassification. So how do you identify English learners, right? When you enroll in school, you do a home language survey. Students are placed based on their LPAC score. We have to notify parents within the first 6 weeks that they're an English language learner. What's our That's all of chapter 1 in most places. We've made the decision as a district leadership team that chapter 1 is about family and community engagement. First page is, when you open that up, is going to be about family and community engagement. The next section is going to be about instructional programs, and the monitoring and and the evaluation accountability part we feel pretty good about and feel like we have systems that's more documentation. So just even the organization of the chapters are being thought about. So the writing process so far, primarily me with some input from district and site administrators. We talk about it at every district leadership team meeting. So we meet every other week for about an hour and a half. We're spending about a half an hour of that hour and a half in our DLT meetings, doing some co-writing. So I give them the principals some prompts, and they write to it, thinking about it, and using that information. In November here, we're going to add our parent outreach and education coordinators, and that's where, who are our stakeholders, right? Alma, Greta, SB, who do we need to be talking to? Where do we need to go, right? Do we need to go to the Wednesday service at the Catholic Church and enter spaces so we're not constantly asking families to come to us? So that's something I'm interested in, is how can we go out? How can our principals, Chris and I, and others, not only invite them to our ELAC meetings, right? And we'll talk about the EL master plan in each of the ELAC meetings throughout the spring, but are there places that we need to be engaging in community, in meetings where it's their turf, it's their meeting, and we're asking permission to come sit at their table rather than asking them to sit at our table.
My question goes back to who are they? And let's take the church. So you're saying maybe we need someone from the church. So that's identifying an organization, but have you reached out to, I don't know, the priest name or whomever is in charge? Have you reached out to that person? I mean, I'm just looking at your time frame here. It says identify them. Yeah, I mean, there's talk about the city. Have you reached out to Jeff K? I'm just throwing names out because those are the only ones I know.
Yeah.
But you're saying we need to identify these, this, parents or whomever.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my interpretation of identify is it's that person right there, not somebody out of this organization. And I get that. That's absolutely necessary. Out of this organization, out of this department, if you will. And then there's the person that I've identified and I'm going to go have coffee with them.
Right, and that's what will happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks, is that identification of a person's name, not just an entity. Yeah, great question. And at least one teacher per site will be part of the writing team. Those are the people that are going to be identified before, like my internal timeline is before we go to Thanksgiving break, right? Those, I need to know exactly who those people are, how we're going to meet up with them. And, it's an aggressive timeline. If we end up needing to slow it down because we need more stakeholder engagement, we'll do it, right? There's no due date on this. These are internal due dates, but I'm that logical sequential person. And if I don't set those due dates for all of us, then there are no due dates. So if this ends up taking longer than hopefully getting it done in June, then it will. But I think, for now we're meeting our due dates. I don't want the due dates to drive the whole process and be like, well, we didn't have time for that. Definitely hold me accountable if we feel like we're moving too fast on this. All right.
How will you be picking the teacher? Or is there going to be more than one teacher potentially?
Yeah, there could be. So at least one teacher per site is... we have to have at least one teacher per site. Generally, what we do for stuff like this is I write up a little email to the principals and say, okay, we're going to do this. Do you want to then forward that email or relay that to your staff, or would you like it to come from me? 99% of the time, the principals say it needs to come from me. I'm the site leader. I want it to come from me.
Right.
And so they will be reaching out after I talk to Alma, SB, and tomorrow morning. And talking with them, and principals and I have already had this talk, the email will go out. And we honestly normally have to beg, right? People have a lot going on. So, in full transparency, the principals will probably put out that email and then they walk around their site and say, hey, this is really cool. It's going to be awesome. We need your help. If we get more than one teacher per site, I would be thrilled. Yeah, so it has to be at least one. If we get more, that would be a beautiful thing. So you can see like January through April, that's a big amount of time. And like we said, as this plays out, and we start adding, we know that educational partner engagement will include our DLACs, staff, teachers and paraprofessionals. It's really important to me, right? The paraprofessionals see our kids and our families through a lens that no one else does, and that they have an opportunity to engage in the process. Students, right? We've learned through the single plan process, the school plan, and through the LCAP process that having empathy interviews, doing focus groups with students. So some of this will be done bimodally when we're getting input on the LCAP, right? We have a system for this as we get input for the LCAP. We're in year 3 of 3 for LCAP. LCAP can be a quarter of the time. I was just writing the principals today that we're going to be scheduling all these meetings in the next couple weeks. So if I go visit with a classroom for an hour, We'll talk about LCAP for 15, 20 minutes, and then we're going to dive more into the EL master plan for the majority of the time. So we're in a small district kind of hitting two birds with one stone and using some of the framework that we already have set up for educational partner engagement. I mentioned starting to get organized for an EL parent town hall in late January. And then we know for community engagement, at a minimum, right, Quotas on Healdsburg, City of Healdsburg, and then others as requested, and the process unfolds. So it's one of those, you don't know what you don't know until you get into it, right? Who is that person? Who is that priest at the Catholic Church that we need to get input from, or a group of folks? So we'll be adding as we go. That's what I got. Any suggestions or questions? Yeah, this is open to ideas and input. If you want to email me after you've had a minute to think about it, you can do that too. Or email him.
I'm glad to hear that we're starting with the California plan as using that as the model, and then customizing, working it into what we need. And beyond that, this is all new to me. So, I don't really have any comments either way. I mean, as far as where we're at and whatnot. I do have a question though about some of the work we're doing around MTSS and information gathering. And will that kind of dovetail with this too, do you think? Or will that be pretty much a separate process, kind of to both of you, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's a piece of it. Certainly, particularly related to the data and how we use the data to provide programs.
Right. Mm-hmm. Push people through the tiers and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So MTSS is kind of probably more internally focused, whereas this has a huge external component.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
That's okay.
Okay, so we have, I just saw in the news actually this week, so updates. Yeah, COVID-19 plan. Gavin Newsom apparently is going to be lifting the emergency declaration around COVID in the state in the next week or two. So I'm not even sure what that means for us, but we're going to update our COVID-19 plan in the meantime with some updated guidance. So as has been all things in the pandemic, it only changes, right? Very quickly. So that is it. All right. So the state is no longer requiring school staff and volunteers who have not been fully vaccinated to take a weekly test. And as case rates and test positivity rate are both low, Sonoma County Public Health Department is not issuing any mandates. They don't plan to. In fact, they have dissolved most of their COVID-19 team. So we have some updates to our COVID-19 plan. Just going to highlight the things that have changed that are major. Beginning Monday, the 24th, we will not be notifying families when their child is potentially exposed. Most districts have not been doing that this year at all. We chose to begin the year continuing to notify, but we're going to do a blanket notification that it's out there, and should your child become symptomatic, you should be concerned and take a test. And then we will not be having mandatory negative tests for students who have any symptom. We're not going to track that. That's actually a huge endeavor for us and takes a lot of man hours. It's not required by the state. And so when there is a positive test, of course, we're going to track the case. We're going to report to public health, and then we're going to ask for a negative test result before they return. But not every runny nose is going to necessitate a test any longer. And then finally, volunteers, because of the change to the requirements with staff, that governs volunteers as well. So we are able to allow volunteers on campus regardless of vaccination status. We still do strongly encourage all to wear a mask, but we're not asking for proof of vaccination or a negative test at this point.
I have a question regarding notification. Is there any legal exposure? I mean, I can think of a lot of health issues, but somebody has COVID. We know that that student has COVID. We don't let the rest of the class, parents of the kids in the class know. Is there a legal exposure to that?
I mean, there's a legal exposure in all things COVID. I don't think there's any additional exposure at this point because we're following the state's guidance.
Okay.
Yeah. We are actually one of the, maybe the only one who started this year notifying. Yeah. No, it got. Yeah.
I think it's like it has value in the smaller settings, like because I know my husband and I were getting like multiple texts a day for our two kids that were in junior high, and but our son who's in elementary school is in a class of 14, and it was maybe useful to know if there was a case in that little group.
And it could go back, things can change. We don't know.
I'm not advocating for that, by the way.
Right.
I think this is a perfectly reasonable transition
it is the
that
direction
we're making here.
Things are headed, hopefully. So
yeah,
hopefully. So that's it for the major changes to the CPP, COVID Protection Plan. Any? There's not. Oh, I thought that it wasn't clicking, so I thought that was it. It was this morning when we did this, and so feels like a different day. So again, staff is not required to be vaccinated any longer. They don't have to take a weekly test. We do have tests available for staff. However, this is one key difference. Cal OSHA is still requiring that staff be notified should they be exposed. So we will continue to do that. And then isolation recommendations have been lessened from a minimum of 10 days to a minimum of 5. Correct. Yes. Sick and positive, right?
You don't have to just wait 10.
Yeah. And oh, go ahead, Rose.
Oh, I just wanted to, just two things. I don't know how many people are out there watching on the internet, maybe none, but
can we get a report?
But I would like to just confirm that any family that needs to get a rapid test can get it through the office.
We have tests at each site, and actually just got an email that they're buying gazillions more for Thanksgiving break to send home with.
Okay, that's great and useful for everybody who's out there and needs to test their kids, because there's also a cold going around right now, and I think they still want to know that your child is negative before they come back to school.
Yeah.
And that uses up a lot of tests.
Diane used to hide the tests, and that's not the case anymore. They're very easily accessible. Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess my next question is just that are the school nurses still available to talk to families?
Absolutely.
Because I think just these practical pieces are going to stay in place even when the restrictions have changed, of just wanting to get the best information about how to proceed if your child gets COVID or whatever.
And we'll be pushing this information out to parents as well.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
So we have vaccine clinics continue. There's headlines about the potential of a new variant, and the best way to protect is a booster. They are in town. Alliance continues to do it twice a week, Wednesdays and Fridays. So that is it on the COVID-19 protection plan. Any other questions?
Questions, comments? I'll entertain a motion to approve the new amendments to the COVID-19 protection plan.
So moved. Oh, sorry. Abigail, you want a second?
I will second.
It's been moved and second, and all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It carries 4-0. Thank you.
Interessante. Okay. Next one. The district master plan. Yeah.
Thank you. It says W. Odetto here, but.
Oh, I'm taking it. So we had a productive meeting last Wednesday with the board and with our elementary principals to talk about the master plan as it pertains to the elementary campuses and the facilities and landscaping, et cetera. I thought it was a healthy conversation, and we landed in a good place. So we bring for you a priority list that is just very brief at this point, with a placeholder for more to come. So as we spoke of on Wednesday, roof replacements at both sites are needed. HVAC replacements at both sites are needed. Those are undeniable needs that we need to move forward with. And so you would be prioritizing those two things as a go for us to begin planning for. And then we're going to work over the next few weeks with our principals and our architects and our construction consultant, construction manager, to itemize the other items that were listed, which are items 3 through 8. And we're going to break things out individually instead of packaged how they were and have some costs. So we'll bring to you in November an updated recommendation for prioritized items 3 through 8.
What is number 3?
Thank you.
Oh, the FMC field and fencing?
Yeah.
Okay, so at that meeting, number 3 was ADA.
The entrance to HES.
HES ADA
Yeah.
entrance.
Right. We didn't change the numbers 3 to 8. We didn't prioritize them because we're going to reprioritize them when we bring them to you.
So they're not prioritized right now.
No, this is from the last PowerPoint.
That was
Yes.
the original list.
Oh, Erica had talked about the shade. But yeah, no, and the next thing would be the HES. Like, we're looking at the feasibility, we talked about this, of making the changes at HES and how that triggers other things and what it would cost.
Right.
At the beginning of the campus.
I would.
But you're not voting on that today. You're just voting on the roofs and the HVAC.
Do we have an estimated cost for the roof and HVAC?
Yeah, it's in there.
Sorry,
1,700 for the roofs and 4,100. Excuse me, 1.7.
Like 1,700. I can't even.
Mike, that doesn't even
wish
do
your
like
roof would cost
part of my house. Yeah.
I know, right? Sign me up.
No, it never mind.
1.7 and
4.1.
so that's most of the money.
It is.
It's a good.
Yeah. But I mean, those are critical.
Yeah, they're musts.
Those are basic functioning things. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And then, like I said, we will bring the other items that we spoke of.
You
And we have
kinda
our
need a
notes
roof,
and
though.
photos of everything as a new priority list following 1 and 2.
Okay, and again,
Yeah.
I would ask that above the FMC, or whatever, 5 to 3 or whatever it is, that number 3 on this list be as the board requested.
It is.
The HES, okay.
Yeah. We haven't broken it out off the list. That's all. Yeah. But yeah, that was the clear direction from the
I'm
board.
looking for it
Yeah.
because I know it was a priority for the board after
Right.
the other 2.
Yeah.
Okay, please don't forget it.
No, it's, yeah.
I know you won't.
It's saved. All right. So we are looking for action to give us the go-ahead for the roofs and the HVAC.
Okay.
I move that we approve the funding of the roof replacement at both sites and the HVAC replacements at both sites. For the recommendation.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded for improving number 1 and number 2. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. And it carries 4-0.
$6 million. Okay.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they're supposed to originally be installed over the summer.
Supply chain issues?
Supply chain issues, yeah. So we can start ordering things.
Good.
Yeah.
I thought that was am I still allowed to comment or is this
Yes.
over now because we voted? That was such a useful, well-organized, great meeting. I really felt like we covered a lot of ground, got a lot of questions answered and in a short period of time and had a meaningful conversation that really was like,
Yeah.
Good.
And more questions to be answered. Right?
Yeah. But I felt like all the main questions were either answered or put out there to be answered next month. And it was just really useful to have everybody together to go over those things. Thank you so much
Absolutely.
for organizing that.
Great. And I also like the fact that the principal there to tacitly advocate for their schools. No, they were very active in advocating and changing things around what
No, it
we
was great.
thought.
Yeah.
They go, no, we want this, which is great.
Very healthy process.
Exactly.
Totally.
So we appreciate that.
Yeah, I really appreciate the organization and the fact that everybody who we would need answers from was there to speak about what was important to them. It was really useful. Thank you.
The the safe school plan, please. Are you going to arm wrestle for it?
I have an old agenda in front of me. Yeah.
First reading of the safe school plan.
On Monday, all the sites had a training from the Healdsburg Police Department, which I think was very helpful, and a lot of things came out of that. Number one being a lot of things haven't been thought about or practiced in a couple years because of the pandemic. We found out changes in some of the things we're currently doing, and we're working on that, and that'll be updated in the final version. But other than that, everything in the packet is just what the sites have done so far, update their maps, evacuation plans, fire drills, earthquake drills, and more training and training and training. We plan on doing more training in January, and I'm hoping to bring the final version to you in January. Is there any questions?
And just a quick, lockdown is danger, stranger. Is that what lockdown means?
Active threat.
An intruder, thank you, whatever.
Active threat.
Yeah, active threat. Okay, thank you.
We're actually revising that lockdown sheet right now as we speak. That's what came out of the training with the police department on Monday.
Okay.
And I'll bring that forward with the final version.
And I just want to add, they're great to work with.
They're
Super
fantastic.
cooperative.
Yeah.
Donated a ton of time to working with our staff.
Oh, great.
Very positive.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And, well, Mr. Superintendent, looks like you're back to review the emergency circumstances.
Yeah, I'm kind of
assembly
hopeful
bill.
we could stop this when he lifts the emergency declaration, but I don't know. So we'll find out. But for now, vote to Zoom if we need it.
I'd like to move that we approve 12.4C, Review Emergency Circumstance Assembly Bill 361.
Thank you for the official.
And
practicing.
I will second that. I've moved and seconded. Oh, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
Did you second? No, that's fine.
You can have the second.
I will second.
Get her in the minutes.
Get her in the minutes.
Wow.
Must be after 8:25.
All in favor?
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, Mike.
Are we in a hurry?
Rose is just practicing. Yeah.
All those in favor, please raise your left hand. And say aye.
Aye.
Aye, it has been approved 4-0.
Comments?
Any comments for information? Transfer. Oh, I have a question on the request for information, maybe you know it, and that is an update on the inter-district transfer requests and approvals. If you don't have it today, that's, next.
It hasn't changed since the update, right? Yeah, I can put numbers in there, but nothing's changed since I reported to the board.
Okay.
Yeah. August. Yeah.
So maybe at the next meeting. Just
Yeah, I can. I'll just put it in. Yeah, either way.
Update's fine.
Yeah.
So
there's places, but you don't get kids trying to transfer mid-year typically. Really? Okay, we're full. I don't remember off the top of my head. Yeah. Well, who knows?
we don't have matching chairs? It's a fashion statement. I love it.
Matching.
And any other requests for information or comments from? I think
We've devolved.
control.
Yeah.
Any other comments or requests at this point from board members? Okay, we will not recess to closed session. And so we are adjourning the meeting. Thank you.